This show focuses on the intersection of technology and politics, as everybody knows. One guy who really understands this area, one of the most experienced VCs in the Valley, is the Managing Director of General Catalyst, Hemant Taneja. Hemant, welcome to Innovate 2016.
Thank you.
Gave you a good introduction, Hemant. This intersection of politics and tech, why is it so important from a VC regulation? What's going on in this sector? Why should we care about the 2016 election?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little primer on how I think about it. 15 years ago, when you were investing in software, you're largely doing application software. How do you make different workflows more effective, more efficient? So you would go sell into the education sector, in the financial services sector, healthcare, mainstream technology. But today things have changed. As all the social, mobile, hardware innovations, everything that's come to bear, what's happening is we're literally redefining and reimagining these services. There's a global application rewrite that's happening.
And I like that, global application rewrite. So you mean regulation now matters?
Well, yeah, because what you're now doing is you're saying, well, here's a better way to provide healthcare for you. So we're actually creating a new healthcare service, or we're providing you a new way to manage your money.
So we're reinventing the world in Silicon Valley.
We're reinventing all these services.
But we can't do it without government?
Well, what's happening is because this innovation is so fast, you're touching and intersecting with and having tension with policies that were created a long time ago, and they were created for good reasons. So while policies have to evolve, as these new services come on board, they're starting to impact and stress the older policies. So the more logic goes into the software for these kinds of services, that logic needs to have regard for what these policies were created for. And that's where we get into trouble.
When you make investments in new sectors, energy perhaps, or healthcare, or transportation, are you looking at regulatory issues? Are you saying, I don't want to get into this space because it's going to get tied up in a huge regulatory firestorm?
We are always careful about investing in sectors that have regulation, but we're not afraid of it. We're invested in Oscar, which is in healthcare, insurance. We're invested in companies like Fundbox and Gusto, which also end up touching regulation. So we actually don't mind it. The key thing for us is finding entrepreneurs that understand that when they start to design products for these spaces, regulation is part of the product.
So what do you make of the 2016 election so far? Has anyone been talking sense? Is it relevant to you, the kind of debates that have been going on TV?
Well, it's definitely very amusing. I certainly enjoyed the 2016 election.
You find it amusing, not worrying?
Well, it's worrying as well, but here's my take on politics. I think politics is getting unbundled. This whole idea that there are a Democratic Party and a Republican Party is starting to not really work well, as politicians can now reach these specific audiences they can cater to. So Donald Trump's got a specific base he's ignited that frankly didn't pay much attention to this before. You look at Bernie Sanders and social libertarian, socialist movement that he's created using social media and other tools. And then you've got Ted Cruz on the other side with the conservative base. The reality is, because you can get access to people on an individualized basis on social media using these different tools, and you can raise capital in a very democratized way, the old establishments aren't able to control who's really going to be put forth.
Is anyone talking the language of Silicon Valley? We had a series of guests on the show who had said that Marco Rubio was the natural candidate of Silicon Valley. That was both from the left and the right. He, of course, is no longer in the race. Is Hillary making sense? I know she was just in the Valley this week, doing a series of fundraisers. I mean, the money in the Valley, I'm guessing, is going to her, isn't it?
I think, in my opinion, they all understand what's happening in the Valley at different levels. And
even Trump?
I mean, maybe he doesn't understand as much as others, but I think they're all exposed to sort of what's happening technologically. I think the issue is the Valley and DC really don't have an impedance match. They are not collaborating. Technology is way out ahead in terms of what it's able to do today. Policy is getting stressed. They don't really understand technology. And to me, the right candidate, who should become president here is somebody who knows, from a technology perspective, is somebody who knows how to foster this collaboration. Because this tech innovation and policy needs to sort of get in lockstep in how we build companies. Because the other thing is, everybody thinks the Valley is like one institution. It's a bunch of millennial 20-something-year-olds that are very wealthy, sort of, doing interesting things in technology. And when every time there's a misstep, whether it was with Theranos or recently with Zenefits or whatever, what ends up happening is it all ends up becoming a further stereotyping mindset around the Valley. And what we need to do is be much more responsible in how we build these companies, how we embrace policy in building these companies. And if we don't, then when we are on the right side of the issues, like in the case of Apple, you still get looked at with...
So you acknowledge that we've made some mistakes and that there is a need for regulation. You're not one of these hardcore libertarians who always see government as the problem.
I think regulations are there for a reason. They need to evolve, just like technology is evolving. But to dismiss them and to say, let's get to large scale and then we'll deal with regulation is not the right way. As I said before, to me, the entrepreneurs that think holistically about these spaces actually think of embedding the regulation in software as part of the product and being very cautious in how they bring these products to market.
That's a really interesting idea. Let's talk specifically about some areas which are very controversial when it comes to regulation. The sharing economy, more or less regulation. Is there a need to control companies like Uber and Lyft?
I think sharing economy needs algorithmic accountability. That's what's really required.
Rather than political accountability?
Well,
You mean transparent algorithms?
I think transparent, but also, so for example, when there's an emergency in a city and surge pricing happens during that emergency, well, that shouldn't really be happening. Like in the old days or in the television, when there's an emergency broadcast, that happens and everybody's losing revenue because that's there for the social good. And when you think about it in the case of Uber, because their algorithms are simply designed for profit maximization, and I'm not saying they're not responsible. I think they're just learning how to do this well. But when you think about it that way, these kinds of situations that policies were created to protect against need to get embedded in software. I don't think that's really quite there yet, and that's where Silicon Valley has to be more mindful in how we
So you mean there'll be laws that are embedded in software, laws that will not allow surge pricing or have a ceiling on surge price?
Depending on the situations, for example, right? It's very nuanced.
What about healthcare? You're heavily invested in that area. What about controlling pricing of drugs and the role of government in terms of determining the pricing of drugs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the government should have a role in determining the pricing of drugs. I do believe in free markets, but in healthcare, my focus has more been on who is building these services, understanding, there's FDA safety and efficacy issues. Like, look what happened with Theranos, right? Yeah. I mean, to have no regard for, FDA
pretty creepy,
sort of processes.
That story,
That's creepy. So the next time there's another entrepreneur building a healthcare company out of here providing services, you get judged. And I think that's the consequence, or the price we'll all have to pay if we don't all do this the right way. As we go deeper and deeper into the economy and do, innovations in sectors that were traditionally very regulated.
What about regulation of access itself and this whole debate about network neutrality? Should the government be more or less involved? Are you in favor of Title II?
I believe there should be a basic service.
So you're a network neutrality guy?
I'm a network neutrality guy, but I think there should be value-added services on top that are allowed as well, so the platforms.
So you are or you aren't? That doesn't sound like network neutrality.
I think it's a tiered structure is what I'm for. Actually, I've written about this before as well.
So you think that we can have kind of a fast lane when it comes to access, a paid fast lane?
I think there should be a basic service, and then there is ability to create value-added services with paid fast lanes on top. But everybody should have access to. Internet's become a basic right in some ways. Everybody should have access to that. But that doesn't mean, if you draw lessons from the power sector, the last time we did that to the power sector, it lost all innovation. And if you look at what's happening there, they're trying to deregulate and try to create.
So you mean you lose innovation if you overregulate?
If you overregulate, and that's why I said there's no.
So Title II worries you, the idea of too much government involvement?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Finally, this is the question we always end on. It's always a tricky one. What do you expect to come out of the 2016 election? We still have a few months to go. What is your forecast? I mean, it's clearly going to be an election between Hillary and Trump. Do you agree?
I think so. I think
who's
that's where this is headed. I would guess Hillary.
And is that good or bad for Silicon Valley?
I think it's good for Silicon Valley.
And if Hillary is watching, I'm sure she is. Hello, Hillary. One thing you'd like her to do to benefit the VCs like yourself, Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs, people who watch this show, what should she be doing to compound, to enrich innovation in tech?
I think increasing the understanding of technology with the regulators. Like, how do we systematically do that so that we can actually get to a place where tech and innovation, and policy work well together as we go to this next world. I think the next decade, a lot of these services we just talked about are going to change fundamentally, and we can do this in a difficult way where innovation stopped along the way and overregulated, or we can make sure everybody's getting, being brought along together in understanding the issues around technology and policy, so that there's a lot of collaboration. We get to the solutions a lot faster.
Hemant Taneja, wise words from a wise VC. Real honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks for having me.